Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today on this discussion on payroll accuracy boosts employee trust. You are almost 500 people that have signed up for this webinar, joining us for this conversation today. And that in itself sort of tells me that this is a topic that we need to discuss even more, even further. And that there is like a surge to discuss these topics that we're talking about today. And I think payroll is sort of one of those areas where if everything is working, it sort of goes under the radar. But if it's not working, well, you cannot ignore it. Within seconds almost, it will be a topic of discussion and debate within your organization. So therefore, I'm really glad that we're talking about this today. And the discussion today will sort of go between the in-betweens of this back and forth. And also see what is the strategic value of payroll and the platform that we can be using it as. And in just a couple of seconds, I will start the discussion here with our experts in the sofa here. But before that, I just want to frame this sort of discussion here. And first off, answer one of the most common questions when you are arranging a webinar, which is, yes, it will be recorded, and yes, you will get the recording afterwards. So just have a look out in your inbox and you will see the recording this week or maybe next week. And you will also get the report with all the statistics and all the things that we are discussing here today. So have a look out for that. I also want to say that we only have like 45 minutes for this discussion, so let's make the most of it. That meaning that if you have questions, don't sit on them. Don't sit and wait for me to say that, okay, so now it's 10 minutes left. What questions do you have? Please, please, please don't sit on them. Ask your questions throughout this webinar so that we can bring them up in the conversation throughout. Put them in the Q&A box that is on the screen right now and ask them there. And ask them in Swedish or English. I will do my best to translate them and bring them up as we go. And this webinar, of course, is brought to you by SD Worx and HR Nytt. So with that, I think we should kick this discussion off. So let me just say welcome to Jan Lauritsen, HR evangelist,
yes,
scientist, consultant at SD Worx and the University of Antwerp.
Yes.
And Magnus Eklöf,
yes,
business solution manager at SD Worx Sweden.
Yes, right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So today we're talking about payroll, and I sort of said it in the beginning there that, you know, either it's a non-topic or it's the topic, mm-hmm. right? But I also want to sort of like frame the discussion here, because most of the time when we're talking about strategic issues within HR, we're mostly talking right now in the era of AI, for example. We're talking about AI, how that will transform everything within HR, or we're talking about the future of the HR role and debating if it's relevant or not. And that's sort of the main topics from different perspectives that we are currently talking about within this community. But today, you are inviting us to talk about something quite different, payroll. Mm-hmm. Why is that? Who would like to start?
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, payroll is a really important part of the organization's kind of compensation system for the employees. And every employee, they will interact with payroll in one way or another. And I think that we forget to talk about it because it's so much focus on AI, for example, and workforce management, workforce planning, and all of this. So we kind of forget the payroll side of things. And it's for me, it's a really important part of what we actually do during the day. So that's why it's important for me to talk about this.
Yeah, and like we said in the subtitle of this webinar, a core driver of employee experience. So beyond all the things that are important in the HR setup of an organization, the sense of belonging and so on, getting paid in time and correctly is one of the primary satisfaction drivers, so people can actually feel comfortable in doing their work and also know that this is going to happen on time and as it's supposed to be. So a satisfaction driver, basically the basis of anything that comes beyond with employee experience. So we cannot not talk about it actually. Maybe we can pull up one figure already from the research that we did. And that is, if we look at, so this is coming from the Pulse research that we did on a European level, but these are the figures for Sweden. So it's basically a sneak preview of some of the things that we've been reviewing. If you look at employees in Sweden, 86% said my pay is always delivered on time. And 73% of employers, what you can see on the right-hand side, says that payroll delays are rare and the organization consistently meets its payroll deadline. So beyond the fact that if you compare to other countries in Europe, this is on average or above, Sweden is doing actually a good job on this. Yeah. We can still say that, well, there are still 14% of employees that feel that they are not paid correctly and on time. And of course, employers and HR departments might look at this differently and say, okay, payroll deadlines or consistently meeting its payroll deadlines might also mean like getting it done all right and so on. There is still room for improvement to get this done. So it still means that we have some incremental improvements to make to actually get better at this and making sure that people feel that they are rewarded fair and transparent and on time.
But as you say, I mean, there is room for improvement, but it's still quite high. What is the instrument or the drive to actually do this right now? Like you say that this is the foundation for everything else coming. Is it that we can't afford to have this?
I think the foundation, and Magnus will talk more about, this is basically payroll being the sole source of truth for anything that is data and comes beyond, for instance. But I think also that if you think about anything that has to do with turnover of personnel, people are thinking of leaving their jobs. I think being paid on time and correctly and fair is one of the basic conditions that needs to be in place. Otherwise, people will be considering to change jobs, to swap jobs. We've had a lot of talk, we've discussed it before, about quiet quitting and so on and so on. Whether they are real phenomena, I don't know, but what we do know is that if we don't get this right, that is a reason for people to start thinking and considering to do something else. Maybe they don't drive directly to changing jobs or swapping jobs. Yeah. But it may incentivize the process of reconsidering their job.
Yeah, and why risk that?
Why risk that if you can get it right from the first time?
Yeah, and if you look at the numbers here, 86%, it's like you say, it's pretty high, but we can improve and make it even better. But what happens if it doesn't work? If 86% believes it is delivered on time, and they can read it and so on, but what happens when it doesn't work? And in Sweden, we are technically quite mature. This makes it even a bigger issue when it goes wrong. And if we talk about the trust level, we will talk about a lot of trust here today. Yep. If we talk about that, then trust drops down to the drain right away as soon as the payroll is incorrect in any way or delayed. So that's why it's very important for us to actually even dive into this even more and try to work with it on a company level, in the board room and everything, not just to see it as a kind of a sub-process like bread and butter or something like that. We need to really lift this up and talk more about it because it's really important that it works and that we can understand the payslip and figure out what actually happened when it goes wrong.
It works both ways because now we're touching on two things. We're touching upon employees. And I think there also, let's be fair, being paid on time is quite important. Financial well-being is becoming one of the most important things raised by respondents in the study to say, okay, in these uncertain times and so on, it's pretty important for a lot of people in terms of financial well-being that to make sure that being paid on time and correctly is a very important thing to not feel too much insecurity in life and in work. So this is pretty important. Also, on the other hand, if you look at the organizational level, financial predictability and managing the costs of personnel, which is actually processed through payroll, is pretty important at the moment, because at the same time for organizations, these uncertain times also require as much predictability as possible, especially on the payroll and the cost side of personnel. So there is a very core element to this for both employees and for employers, with HR in the middle, of course, to get this right. First time right is preferably, so it can actually be predictable and make sure that people want to continue to work, and also satisfy our colleagues of finance, knowing that we got things under control.
That we have it under control,
Yeah.
yeah. But, and you also said that, okay, because of the maturity of our systems and the tech of this, it will be a greater dent in trust if it goes wrong. Why is that? What is connectivity between that?
I mean, connectivity, that's basically all about end-to-end solutions, making sure that we have solutions that are connected, so that we don't have manual steps and so on. But it's quite interesting in these numbers that we see. It's 73% of the employers say that they have some kind of issue, or 73% say it's okay. But the rest has some challenges around this area, which is quite interesting, because the employees seem to think it works pretty good, but the employer, they think differently in these numbers, as I see it.
Or at least they feel, because they are employers, means that they are HR respondents mainly, is that they feel that in the process there's still much improvement to make to get this done in time. Like you said before, managing the file in time and getting it over, making sure that payment is processed, that's one thing. But if we don't get it on time, then we need to do all sorts of acts to make it happen again. It may well be that the employee won't notice in the end, but that on HR side, that we have noticed that because of the insecurity in our systems, that we are still focusing too much on getting it right, while we can prepare for that at the same time. So I think that the tech stack, both on HR side but also on employee side, is a pretty important one to get the data in on time, to get the data right, and so on. So if I may, I want to pull up one other. We got two slides with figures coming up, one from employee side and one from employer side. So when Magnus talked about tech, I also think that, so employees in Sweden respond, 73% respond, my payslip is easy to read and understand, 73%. So yes, payroll is complex. It is complex in some other, it's notoriously complex in some other countries like my own Belgium, but everywhere there is a lot of complexity involved. So there is a lot of work to do there. But what I found more interesting is that also employees in Sweden, 50% of them say, my organization offers easy self-service options for managing time, leave, and pay. Now there, I think there is really room for improvement on this side. Because it also is about control, it's about trust. But on the other side, and that's definitely Magnus's point, take on this, if you look on the process side, if we can get the data right from the first time, from the employee, in terms of leave, and planning, and so on, this will help us a lot to get that process that we just talked about getting the file right for the payroll processing in the end, to get that done in the end. So this is pretty important to understand that there is a lot of work to be done in terms of transparency and making sure that people can have a lot of things, more things in control, because that helps us also on the HR and the employer side. And maybe Magnus can take the next slide then on the employer's respondents to some questions that we had.
Yeah, but you can go back to the previous one, because I have some things to say. Because looking at 50% of the employees, they don't have access to a good self-service solution, which to me is a really high number. I expected actually more. I'm surprised by these figures, because everywhere I look around, I can see that, okay, we have something, but it seems like it doesn't really work that good. So it's not a good enough self-service so the employees can really use it in a good way. So we have a lot of improvements to do here. And at the same time, the payslip, to understand it and read it, and the transparency around it, how is this pay actually calculated? How do I know that it's correct? And if we can't answer that, then the trust for the payslip itself will just drop as well. So it doesn't mean that it's wrong. but it could be that I don't understand what I'm looking at. And that requires really skilled payroll specialists, for example. They need to be able to answer this, and a really good support service internally, so people can tell their employees, how did we come up with these numbers?
Yeah.
And I also think like maybe this has something to do with the preference we have for the UE transparency directive as well. Like, is this sort of showcasing us that we are a bit uphill when it comes to this, or prepare-wise in the transparency?
Well, I think that in terms of transparency, there are two sides to this. I think, yes, we need to do more to make sure that we can make this work in terms of transparency. That has a lot to do with understanding my payslip, and then in terms of transparency, being able to compare it to a system like this is fair.
Yes.
Right? That's true. Also wanted to point out, the other thing is that in terms of self-service options, employees are not only employees, they are also consumers. And they are used to interact with other services in self-service mode and expect more.
In other areas of their life.
In other areas of their life. So, and they also expect that if they put it in there, that it comes out correct. So I think there is, especially also from the demand side, I think employees are on the demand side to have more self-service options, which is actually an upside for everything that has to do with payroll calculation, because the more data and the more correct data that we have and the more on-time data that we have, the more we can process correctly in time and make sure that everybody gets his pay on time and get that process. So it's something that works both ways. So if we have people are in demand of managing that themselves more and more, cool, it helps us. And at the same time, will give us the opportunity as HR employers to give back in a transparent way how that has worked and been processed. So there is an upside to this. I think that we can actually move this forward. And of course, I mean, digital self-services is a no-brainer in that sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now we can look at the numbers.
There you go.
Now it's okay. Let's move forward.
Yeah, because I mean, this clearly shows what we
Cool
actually
segue,
talk about. I mean, the issue with pay transparency is that our companies in Sweden that I talked to, we haven't been able to prepare enough. And that's one of the reasons why it's been delayed.
Yeah.
So we get, let's say, is it about a year extra we get to prepare? On the other side, we don't actually. Maybe it's been communicated now, but the report itself and the details inside what we are expecting to report to the Diskrimineringsombudsmannen is not defined 100% yet. So we have some work left to do in this area. So I can understand the figures here, because I believe employers, they are a bit worried about the compliance problems and issues with pay transparency and other EU regulations that we will get in our hands. And this stresses even more about the technical side of things, that we need to have working solutions in the back end, so we don't have to do everything manually when we actually start to work with this and more organized.
I think also there, looking at the delay in the transposition of the EU pay transparency directive, the message that we give, and also I'll know, being quite aware that in Sweden there has been an ask for a delay, it doesn't mean that we should wait, right?
No.
So there are many things. So yes, we are awaiting the transposition of the legislation towards the reporting demand. That doesn't mean that we cannot prepare. And the things that we have to do to prepare are basically also the things that we discussed over the previous slide. If we can get the data right in, then we have a sole source of information that can also help us in the end to pull those data to be compliant with whatever transparency demands there will be in the end related to the Pay Transparency Act. So here I think this is a call to action for any organization to look at what are the things that we can put in place to make sure if we can make payroll work correctly on time and as complete as possible, then we have a very single and a very good source of data to get the rest done as well. Because in the end, and if you look at the responses here, employers in Sweden, organizations experience payroll-related compliance issues or audit findings, adapt effectively to new. Let's face it, we are not finished with new legislation.
No.
So legislation is coming, and how we can do that, and this is also where all sorts of organizations can help. this is going to impact in the end the payroll anyway. So let's get that right first. Make sure that we have that. Let's do, and then we are prepared also for these legislative changes. Getting the basics right in that sense and then I'm back to more of Magnus's work, getting the data right from a technical perspective, from a stack perspective, from a data perspective, will help us a lot, not alone to get payroll right, but all other demands that we are expecting in the future.
Yeah.
And sort of like spinning off on that, like how does this then maybe show up as an important boardroom topic?
Yeah. From the work that I've been doing and that we discuss also, I've been working quite a bit on strategic workforce planning and other issues. The overall thing that is at play definitely also on a board level, and we just scratched the surface a bit before, is total cost of employment.
Yeah.
Being in charge and control of your total cost of employment, how it's going to evolve, be predictable about that, right? Having the people analytics in place and the payroll analytics in place to look forward and predict what's going to happen is so important, especially if you know that depending on the organization that you are, anything between 40 and 80% of your total cost may be personnel cost. So having that under control, also knowing that if we can get the data right, if we can get the payroll right, then we have accurate and actual data to start working with. I think that is one of the most important things, but that is also more your take on this.
Yeah, but I mean, in the boardroom, of course, they have a lot of challenges right now in the boardroom, but I think payroll is a really important task to bring to the boardroom, to lift it up, because many companies today, they work with payroll as a sub-process to workforce planning, workforce, everything related to onboarding, offboarding, and trying to find the right resource and so on. But if we start to talk about, instead of payroll processing as a sub-process, we talk about payroll intelligence, then we can lift up the payroll team together with the HR, of course, and IT, and start to really focus on what's important, and that is to make everything work. And in the end of the day, we hope that we can deliver a bit more percentage on the first numbers that we saw, the accuracy of the payroll that's on time and that is correct. If we could do, like we talked about this before we started, even if we could just get it 1% better, that means a lot to a lot of people. So
a lot to a lot of people in terms of experience, but also a lot towards personnel cost forecasting for the finance department, for instance.
Yeah.
So it will always work both ways. If we can incrementally get this better by 1%, 2%, 3%, we will benefit both on the organization side and at the employee side in terms of, on the one side, happiness experience, and on the other side, being able to forecast more accurately, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And making that sort of shift that you were talking about, like you're out there meeting different organizations, what are they primarily doing right now then to sort of make that shift and become more on point with their payroll process, not to make it just about pay?
Yeah, it's a lot about trying to make everything work as an ecosystem of different solutions to that the employees, they report time and things in different solutions. But what they are really trying to figure out, and the biggest challenge for most of the companies that I meet, is the insight part. You were into it. How to actually predict payroll cost, or trying to analyze what is the cost today and how is it split in the workforce, how much sick leave do we have, how much pension do we owe. All of these things is more important today than it was just a few years ago. So the analytics part is something that a lot of companies work with. I met one of our bigger banks the other day, and we had a talk around this, and it was very clear to me that they are trying to figure out what to grasp from the HR and payroll systems to be able to do the business kind of planning and follow up.
coming back to what you said in the beginning, the topics that are very high on the agenda, the impact of AI on the workforce, the HR function, and so on and so on. Strategic workforce planning. It often deals with what are the future skills. If you look at what's below the waterline, basically it's dealing with cost. How is personnel cost going to evolve? What is it? How is it going to impact? Where will we need to do investments in terms of learning to work with these new tools in trying to acquire new skills for the future? There are a lot of cost and investment related questions to this, and getting the data right first, like we said before, is therefore increasingly important to actually make these decisions based on the correct data. So we cannot just ignore this, and maybe to use a slogan, you might say, let's get the pay out of the way, right? So let's make sure that pay is not an issue on the employee side, everybody happy there, and let's make sure that the organization is also fair and is okay with what we are paying and how we are controlling payroll, so that we don't have to worry about this, and we can actually also start thinking about the other stuff that we can do with all these data, which is strategic workforce planning, is people analytics, is getting it under control, is making sure that compliance actually works in our organization. So there is effort required to get this done, because it has so much other benefits for the control and the management of HR that we should actually improve this, even with a couple of percentages looking at the first data.
Yeah, and I mean, in the boardroom, we have this picture now, so we can talk a bit about. But in the boardroom, every board member that I met, one of the highest priority they have is efficiency. And efficiency to me means cost reductions. For example, try to become more efficient with what you have, and try to produce more with your resources, and to be able to do that. Instead of just talking about efficiency, we could talk about more things related to that. And here we have 3 examples of things that could be discussed. We could talk about control, how to become compliant, work with automation to control everything that we have in the data flow, so we can ensure data quality and all of those things, and secure the payroll itself so it is accurate and correct. Then we have the next part, which is the connectivity, which is the technical side, where HR, payroll, and IT work together to put together a system landscape that actually works. So HR, payroll, and time, those are the 3 kind of entities that really needs to be put together with other transactional-based systems like expense management and things like that. So end-to-end integration is really important. And all of this is different at different companies. We have some companies, they have a best of breed strategy when it comes to solution what they buy, and some have best of suite. But the main strategy for everyone at IT at least is to do SaaS. That is the fastest growing side of the business still. People we said something a few years ago that we have our IT systems in the closet, or what did we say?
IT system in the closet.
No, it was in the wardrobe.
I actually have a question here from the audience, from Henry here. If we should focus on just one thing, what would that be? Okay.
You have an idea?
I think we had it before. It's getting payroll right and first time right. I think that is a beneficial part for a lot of the people involved in the employer-employee relationship. If it's first time right and on time, that means a lot of comfort for the employee. That also means reliability, predictability, financial well-being. It also means in terms of costs, what Magnus was just referring to, if we get it first time right, we don't have to spend more costs and time to get it right the second time. I think that is one of the principles that we should strive for as much as possible when it comes to payroll, is to getting it first time right. It saves a lot of energy, it saves a lot of money if we just get it right the first time. And that means getting what we talked about, making sure that we increase the employee self-service part of it so that we get those data also there. It means that we can get compliance under control in time so that we know what is going to happen. And then we are prepared to do whatever is coming up. If we get that right, then we talked about before, we are not only ready to actually serve the organization and the employee, but we're also ready for whatever is coming towards us in terms of reporting obligations from the European Union and others. Because the data set is there, it is right, we know that it's correct, and then we can get the processing down really fast, I think. That is definitely something that we should try for.
Yeah.
But like we saw on the previous slides and also on this last slide that Magnus produced, it involves a number of things that we have to get in place to make that also work. And that is one of the most important things here.
But is it also then a case of like when you check out from this webinar and you go home to your organization, sort of looking at your own numbers, what are our numbers of sort of making the pay coming right time, and sort of finding what are those small adjustments then that I could start doing right now?
Yeah, so if you measure, you know.
Yeah.
Measuring is knowing. So I think it is important for the people that are listening that, yes, we should measure. Did we get it right? To which extent did we get it right? If we got it right, how can we make sure that we can continue to getting it right?
And just duplicate
and
that
just
process.
duplicate that. So what's the contingency that we have? If not, how can we do better next time of what is the percentage of incremental improvement that we can make so we can get it right over time? What is the KPI that we give ourselves and that we agree with board or with the ExCom to make sure that we are actually putting plans in place? And the plans relate to connectivity. Are the systems there? Are the plans relate to the self-services? Do we have enough self-service options to actually get the data in right? Are we in control of the compliance issues? So there we have to, if you have it measured, if we have KPIs and say, yes, this is important, we have to make an incremental improvement of X, then we're going to look at what levers do we have to use over time to get that right over time.
Yeah.
It's very unlikely that if you measure now that you'll get it right next month.
Yeah.
It may well be if there is one single source issue, that may well be, then you get it right, you just fix
But
it.
you need to see the pattern.
Well, you
sort
need
of.
the pattern and say, okay, we can move forward.
Yeah.
What is the effect? Let's try to assess or predict what is the effect if we actually can do a better self-service. If we have asks for leave or for whatever things, expense, if we have that in time and if we have it, how will that improve our process?
Yeah.
In the end,
Experiment with it.
well, I wouldn't say experiment.
Okay.
No, let's not experiment with people's salary.
No, but with not experiment with their salary, but sort of what sort of actions actually influence that sort of number of trust and what actually makes it even higher that it's on time, sort of like that.
I think in between, and then I'll hand over to Magnus again because now I'm going to go on a technical field.
And he's sitting there. Let me.
It means also that if you do all that, in the middle we will reduce handling errors.
Yeah.
The handling errors that to use to manipulate the data are being reduced because we got one source of data that is right from the first time. In addition to that, and then I'm reeling off track, then I'm back to Magnus. If we can use artificial intelligence to track some of those processes and to search for those patterns, which we are actually also experimenting with ourselves, then I think we can actually do a better job in the future over the long run, actually.
Yeah. And you were sort of touching upon that with the insights, I think.
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah, I mean AI, if we talk about AI for a second, it will of course impact all of these areas. I mean, if you look at insights, AI is a really, really strong tool to use to do predictions, for example. It can read patterns that we never can figure out ourselves, at least during our lifetime, Jan.
No, but also if you look, we talked about if you look at payroll data. I mean, in Europe we're doing what are we over 6 million pay slips a month. In Sweden, I don't know how much, but even if it's a couple of hundreds of thousands, if you want to look at patterns happening in there with the human eye, we're never going to notice.
Yeah. Yeah, but the insights part, of course, AI can do lots of things there, and also in the connectivity and the control part, we will see a lot of things that we will implement in those parts of our solutions.
Yeah.
But I think going back to what you talked about number one priority. If I summarize what you said, it's about employee experience to me. And if you focus on employee experience, then we can build on trust. And to measure that, we have employee satisfaction score, for example. We can measure number of pay slips. We can look into the support tool and try to figure out how many questions and what kind of questions do we get to our payroll department. And can we fix this in any way so we can capture what problems do we actually have right now? If we're going back to what you started out with this webinar, asking us what can we do, what little things can we do to fix things right away. And I think we can fix things just looking at our support department, for example, and find that. And we can ask our employees, do you understand your payslip?
Yeah.
In this yearly employee satisfaction survey, we could add the question, do you understand your payroll? If they say no, then we need to
then
do
we
something.
have a problem. Yeah. That's obvious. Yeah, exactly. I have a couple of more questions here, and I just want to encourage you who are listening and looking at this right now, keep the questions coming. If we don't have time to answer all of them, we will find a way to send those out with the recording afterwards. So ask away, don't be shy. Okay, so there's a question here from Anna. What can you do as an employer to a higher degree to get in the right information from the organization in time to be able to pay the right salary? What are your recommendations? For example, other types of absence and stuff like that. How can they get the information to get the salary be on time, right?
There is one side, technical side, of course, and make sure that you have solutions that can talk to each other integration-wise, and that you have a good self-service like we talked about here today. That is things that you could look into, for example.
Yeah.
One, and then the other one is get the data in that you need to process on time. And that may be by self-servicing. And if you don't have that, then you need to make sure that your HR department is organized to get the data in on time. But in the end, if you want to get it done timely and correctly, surely technical solutions are a big chunk of solving this problem. If you're still handling data manually, probably that's one of the things where you should start to avoid, like we said before, handling errors in the data manipulation.
Okay, let's move on here. I have another question from Tess here. The difficulties with payroll lie in getting it right when complex payroll issues arise that conflict with laws, regulations, and agreements. And these situations are what most often lead to incorrect pay being issued at the wrong time. And they are why payroll management is so difficult in organizations that operate around the clock. I see these patterns and processes as the biggest problem. What would you say to that?
Well, I continue again with the technical side here, unfortunately, but you have the technical side, and then you have the skill side of the payroll person that actually working with the payroll, so they know how it works. But you need to have the collective agreement set up correctly in the solution, and you need to have the workforce management solution set up in the right way, so you can easily allow your employees to choose the correct pay types, for example, depending on how they work. And the more automation you can get in behind of this reporting, the less kind of issues you will see in your pay.
Yeah, I think that it's a very fair question. A lot of the complexity arises from the complexity of legislation and anything that goes beyond the standard process. So what Magnus referred to also, you need to get the social agreements in correctly. It usually has to do with, correctly if I'm wrong, overtime regulation. It has to do with shifts. It has to do with all these kind of things that actually diverge from the normal payroll process that actually created the complexity. That means getting it in the system correctly and then being able to manipulate it correctly as well. So, but yes, I agree completely. That's the part of payroll that is definitely hard to manage.
Yeah, you can also measure how many items you have on the rest list for next month. Because some payroll team, they don't have time to finish everything in time before payroll run. So the less you can, or the more you can reduce that list. And you can work with that, of course. And like we said, automation in the back end and making sure that solutions talk to each other with integrations. I think that can help.
Yeah. Let's take a couple of more questions. What do you do when employees are poor at or uninterested in filling in and approving their monthly timesheets on time? I have to remind the same people every month. I have even threatened that they will not receive their salary without approval.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, I think that was, yeah.
But I mean, we're talking about grown-ups. And if they don't report, we cannot do that much about it. So maybe training can help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the ways that you can sort of nudge a person to do something. I know a payroll, a colleague of mine a couple of years ago, she put on, and this is a bit silly maybe, but it worked because she sort of played on the fact that payroll sometimes is called like the payroll bitch, like the witch. Sort of.
Let's
like,
use witch.
Yeah, sorry, the witch, and she put on this witch hat, and she went around the office and like, okay, so it's payroll time. Have you signed? Have you got in your contacts yet? And it worked because it was human contact as well.
Yeah. Well, I think there are several things. I'm an educational psychologist by training, so I would agree with learning, definitely. We should explain to people at least why it's important and how it works and what's the process, definitely one thing. Secondly, we should make it as easy as possible to get the data in. So it should be very convenient. It should look like any other tool to report your hours, to report your absence time, and so on, so that there's no issue in that you can do it on the moment that it's happening. In the end, you're going to have to put in place, like your dear colleague or friend, you have to put in place some witchcraft to actually enforce it and say, okay, this is all good and well, but this is not optional. This is basically, you need to do this.
Yeah.
Point. And we're done. So yes, let's make sure that it's as easy as possible using technology. Let's invest the time to make people actually aware how they learn and why it's important. And in the end, let's enforce it, because otherwise you will never get it right.
Yeah. Let's take a final question, and then I think the time is running out. And I just want to remind everyone also that you are going to get some questions of your own to answer before you sign off, so please do that. But the final question here is from Anastasia. What is the net of cost versus benefit from the organizational perspective with going from payroll processing to payroll intelligence in terms of strategic employee planning, etc.?
You want to take that? That's really quite a hard one to finish.
It was a hard question. Maybe we can expand on that when writing an email or something.
The most important thing, I think, is moving towards that intelligence brings about a lot of costs that you don't incur the costs that you're incurring now in handling a lot of the data, also towards strategic workforce planning, people analytics, and so on and so on. So I would expect that in terms of costs, handling costs, personnel costs that have to do with all of this, you can actually reduce quite a bit if you get this right and move to intelligence. So if the data are becoming your driver of your self-service centers, of your HR department, this should be able to have an efficiency gain in terms of cost there. How much exactly, I'm afraid I cannot tell, but that is definitely where we can find some of the optimizations, let's say, both of the HR organization as in staffing, as in handling all these kind of things. So administrative processes that are being reduced.
Yeah, so if you work with these three areas that we talked about in this, I'm not sure if this picture is still up, but control, connectivity, and insights. If we work with this and we can build on trust, then we will of course see gains.
Yes.
In the business, of course.
Again, it's the same thing. Like getting this first time right has a lot of benefits in the long run towards all the other things that we started talking about, preparing for pay transparency, analytics, and so on. So that's why also we wanted to actually put this on the agenda again as one of the primary processes of HR and the primary sources of information to getting HR up to speed.
Yeah, like a self-playing piano. That's where we include payroll as one of the key pieces. Yeah.
I think that will have to be like the ending of our conversation for today. Thank you so much. And I think there is like a slide also with your contacts. Yeah. So you can reach out to ask more questions about this. And also, as I said in the beginning, you will get the report sent out to you as soon as it's finished regarding all these issues. And please answer the questions regarding this webinar today so that we can make it even better and greater next time. Thank you so much.